Randomness of podcast listeners, this is your host, Rashad Woods. Today I have a very special guest, and I'm honored that he carved out time out of his busy schedule to be able to speak with me today. Stephen Ford, a sci-fi author and a technological savant with multiple disciplines in his background, and he's been kind enough to share his story with us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi, Rashad. So where do you like to start?
Your
I
background's
published...
amazing. Yeah, well, just tell us
Okay.
about your humble beginnings and where you get where you're at right now.
Okay. Well, I've had 5 books published in the last 2-3 years.
Amazing.
So this is a second career for me because I had 40 years in IT, and then I started writing as something to do after I retired. So that's where I am now. Yeah, I was always been kind of interested in writing. I used to write technical reports and manuals and all sorts of things like that in IT. Pretty dry subject matter, you might think. People used to kind of giggle when they read my stuff. I kind of tried to make it interesting. So I thought, yeah, I got a little bit of a flair for this. I can make it more interesting than most people make it. So after I retired, I thought, do I want to carry on throwing things at the TV when you see what's going on in the world today? I want to write about it. I want to actually share it with people and get my ideas across out there. So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fascinating. I talk to people who are particularly at the forefront of things prior to them being massively popular or in regular parts of culture. So here you are doing technical manuals in IT 40 years ago when, for lack of a better term, that wasn't the field of work that most people thought when their mind was formulated, right? That's when I want to be the banker, the finance guy. And here you are on the technical side of things and the IT side of things when it's very bare bones and very small and niche. So what was it like being an early adopter of being in IT before it became this conglomerate that it is right now?
Well, I kind of just fell into IT in a way. I was trying to think, what the hell do I do now? I've left school. I don't want to go to college. I want to do something. And one option was the Hong Kong police force, believe it or not, because they just fired about a third of the Hong Kong police because they were corrupt. This was back in the 1970s. So it's kind of strange. British colony in those days. So they did a mass recruitment for people to join the Hong Kong police. And one of my close friends did actually join and went over there. So that's one thing I was kind of thinking of. And then another thing, I went to the Air Force and went on one of their officer recruitment things. And I was an arrogant git in those days because I did the aptitude tests, and they said to me, "Well, we won't take you as a pilot, but we'll take you as a navigator." So I kind of like weapons officer, second guy in the cockpit. And I guess I was, I could figure out where I was, and I could do the mental arithmetic real quick and that kind of thing. Actually controlling the aircraft, maybe it wasn't me. And I thought, I won't do that. So, and then they were recruiting, a big company was recruiting trainee programmers.
Beautiful.
Computer programmers. I did the aptitude test, and they said, "Yeah, you're great. Yeah, we want you." So I signed on as a trainee programmer. So it was kind of like I didn't sort of set out with a huge ambition to go into that field. In fact, it barely existed when I was a child. But yeah, there I was in IT. So I was there ever since until I retired.
That's really cool because, I can picture just, a young curious guy with, gets a newspaper or some sort of, or passes by a building and says, and you're like, okay, well, I've tried this. Let's see how this works itself out. And what's crazy is you did security for the, cybersecurity for the 2012 Olympics in London.
That's right. Yeah.
It's amazing. What was that like?
Well, yeah, it was one of those situations where if I told you about it, I'd have to shoot you, kind of thing, because big security. I was dealing with the through the Home Office to the which is like the Home Office is sort of like the Department of Homeland Security in the States.
Yeah, right,
So the same sort of thing. So it was dealing with the counterintelligence people and that kind of thing. But it was more mundane than that. It was really just you had to just keep track of everybody who was getting credentials to come to the Olympics, because there's no visas or anything required for the Olympics. Anybody can come who's nominated by the country concerned. So if you're Korea or someone, you just could send all the spooks you like, and we have to accept them. So sort of keep track of these guys. Where are they?
That'd be nuts.
When they come in and when they go out and that kind of thing. And then of course the other security threats, with the various people might bomb the place or that kind of stuff as well.
Right. So you look at the evolution of threats in the world, right? And obviously, and I don't make this to be a macabre show, but now you have this huge technological situation that, for lack of a better term, has a lot of bad actors, a lot of well-funded operations, and it's a 24/7, 365 situation where before, you would be concerned about the mugger or the miscreant of society. Now you have these digital threats that you have to be concerned with, and you have millions of people in a very concentrated location where information can pass very quickly or be stolen, and you have to be aware of all of it at once. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, so I moved on from there to writing some books. And the first one I wrote was one of the ones which I think we're featuring today,
Yes.
Destiny of a Free Spirit.
Yes.
Which was my first book, which is a futuristic novel set after a nuclear war. So it's some time after a nuclear war. It's not really about the nuclear war. It's about the sort of society that has evolved since that happened.
That too.
At that time, there's this entity called the Commission. I've called it the Commission, which is kind of like a super United Nations. Yeah. So United Nations that actually works and is serious, as opposed to one that's like today, really effectively defunct. Yeah. So the role of the Commission is to prevent more wars, like the United Nations, to clean up the environment, because the environment's been trashed by then, not least by the war itself, but also by all the other things that we do, pollution, global warming, those kind of things, and protect human cultures. So to allow individual cultures of nations and languages and religions and all that sort of thing to continue to be protected and exist and not be swamped. So those are the three missions, if you like, of the Commission. However, as I'm British, the Commission has other resonances, which is to do with Brexit, because the Commission is the supposedly faceless bureaucrats of the European Union, which were got a very bad press in the Brexit scenario. So I've woven that thought into it as well. So to build up kind of resentment to this Commission, but that is kind of the background. But it's not really what the book's about. But what's happened is the Commission has established two realms in the world. One I've called Economica, which is like the modern world, robots, automation, everything you can think of, and the other world is Ecologia, which is like a nature reserve. So there are people there that they're Stone Age people, and they live alongside bears, wolves, mammoths, reintroduced saber cats, like a Pleistocene world, the world where humans evolved. And the main character has illicitly found a portal between the two, because you're not allowed to move between the two. So he sets himself up with an existence in both of those environments. And then at the end of the book, the portal's about to be closed. He's about to lose the ability to move between the two, and he has to choose which one he's going to live in. I think the question I'm really asking is, which is more natural for humans? Is it the world where human beings evolved, which is like the Pleistocene world, the world where you share with other animals and nature and so on? or the modern world we've created, which we're not evolved to live in at all.
No question.
And I think an underlying thought is that we're trashing the place. You know, we don't know how to run the world or how to exist in the world that we've created for ourselves, because that isn't what human beings were evolved to live in. We're evolved to live in the African savannah or that kind of thing. So that's the kind of underlying message of that book and what I'm exploring there. Yeah. So
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What were your inspirations sci-fi wise? Was it Asimov? Was it Arthur C. Clarke? Was it those of that ilk that really like spurn you? Was there any particular author that inspired you? Right.
Asimov was one. I was brought up on the Foundation series and so on. Were quite
That's a great show.
Reasonably recent books in my day. So I've read those. But I think also George Orwell, 1984,
Absolutely.
And that kind of thing as well. So the political side of it too is something that definitely inspired me to write the books I've written.
Right. And what book doesn't get enough credit? Even like people forget that the creator of Tarzan created A Princess of Mars, right? And that was really the beginning of it all. The author's name is at the time eluding my.
Yeah, me too.
It's on the tip of my tongue, and I'll end up hemming and hawing about it, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. You also have topics like free speech versus intolerance, and so how what is your basis and thoughts in that?
Okay, well, the book that we're referring to here is a book called No Free Speech for Hate.
Yeah.
I think what inspired me to write that book was what is it that make people vote for the likes of Donald Trump or an equivalence in other countries? It's not unique to the United States. We have similar kind of demagogic characters in the UK and other European countries, not to mention Philippines, Brazil. We've seen that kind of politician getting elected all around the world. And there must be something that turns people off the alternative, the liberal alternative. It can't be attractive to people that they will resort to that. And so I started, what I wanted to do was put a mirror up to the liberals saying, this is what you look like. This is why you're unattractive. This is why people aren't voting for you. And I think what I'm highlighting in No Free Speech for Hate, in the title and in the the way in the book and the setup there, is the fact that we have this new religion. It's in effect, I would say it's a religion of all the intersectionalist victimhood, all the different categories you can be to be a victim, the strange things about gender, all that kind of thing. And it's not just let's explore these ideas and let's have and consider people who are victims and all this. It's a rigid dogma. It's like a something you can't deviate from. You have to accept this whole package, and they persecute people who even deviate slightly, if they're their own kind, if you like. But if they say, well, I actually don't agree with this aspect, they're suddenly, they're cancelled, deplatformed, all this kind of stuff. And particularly people I've highlighted in the book are what they call TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. So if you don't go with some of the gender ideas or that they put out, suddenly you're a terrible person and have to be hounded and out of polite society. So it is almost as rigid a sort of religion, if you like, as something you had in the Spanish Inquisition, going way back, or anybody who deviates from the politics or the creed is hounded. So in my scenario, it is set in England. It's a hypothetical university, which I've called Slough University, but actually you find out later that it's actually repurposed from a famous English college that's been taken over and made into one of these universities, full of radicals, and religiously enforcing all these rules they've got. The government is something I've called liberal. It's a hypothetical party, but I've called it liberal socialists.
Okay.
So that's the sort of framework. And what I'm highlighting is the universities have taken over everything. If you want to get anywhere in society, you have to be a graduate.
Correct.
That means
it's no different over here, right? So like, it's weird because it can be a conversation starter or ender, right? Like, where'd you go to school at? I didn't. And then somehow that's like some sort of you're less than when that when that answer's no, regardless of your level of success outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was brought up, you didn't need to go to college. You can have all sorts of. You can get out. Most careers were open to people who didn't go to college. Today, you can't get a job more than a menial job really, unless you're a graduate.
That's strange.
And in the story, I've taken it a stage further. I've said that you can't be a refuse collector without being a graduate in refuse handling, and they've taken over, made everything a graduate profession. And so the people who are not, who don't go to college, they're the ones who fail on the politics, because the entry criteria for getting into to college is to be what they call educationally suitable. And to be educationally suitable, you have to subscribe to and be able to know all about the jargon associated with all the intersectionalists and the woke things and all that kind of stuff. And there's a sort of a great unwashed outside of this system who somehow scratch in existence. And in the story, the government has decided to suppress Remembrance Day celebrations. It's a big thing over here in the UK. It's probably bigger than the States. Every November 11th, we have everyone wears poppies. There's military parades. There's everybody remembers. The last post is played on the bugle and so on.
Yeah.
And it's a really big thing. But the powers that be have decided that it's militaristic, jingoistic. It's celebrating colonial oppression and all this stuff. So they decided that they're going to cancel it. And then the great unwashed outside of the university system, they rebel, and they're led by a populist leader who takes over the government, and overthrows all the stuff that they put in place. So that's the basic storyline. And then there's the main character is a professor who has to navigate his way through this whole thing. He's trying to sort of be a reasonable guy and not rock the boat and keep the thing going. And his wife has been thrown out of polite society because she's a TERF. And so he has to have a girlfriend who for form's sake, to show that he's not related to his wife anymore and so on.
Yeah. It's definitely, I can see the inspirations from Orwell, and I think anything that has relevance to current events is very powerful, because that's the beauty of authorship and penmanship and creativity, right? You immediately see where this can lead to, and then by doing that, you hold up a mirror to society as a whole, right? Because you're like, well, this is actually pretty more accurate than people want to admit, right? That's what was so fascinating about a lot of the books, like Animal Farm, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I didn't make anything up in my book. Everything that I feature, I've read about, I've heard about. That this has actually happened to somebody, and I sort of weave it into the story. And yet, when you read it all together, you think, my God, this is a super oppressive society, and it's the exact opposite of liberal. There's no tolerance here at all. I mean, and as for the hate, well, there's nobody hating more than the people who are trying to suppress hate. It's kind of. So I want to put this up as a mirror to people to say, look, this is what you're like, folks. Now whether that'll get through, I don't know. I think the ones who are really sort of extreme in that thing will reject it and try and cancel me. Or
I think sometimes when society gets to see itself in whatever manner it sees, you kind of can look. Hopefully, you have a chance. People can have a chance to pause, reflect, or be like, "Whoa, this is really how this is perceived to be." And I love, when I was listening to you talk, the entire time I kept thinking of the movie like Gattaca, right? I don't know if you've ever seen the movie
Yeah,
Gattaca with Ethan Hawke, where like society engineered, and then later on it was like if you couldn't be in certain segments of society because people and parents were digitally altering their kids' DNA for them to get to the prestigious university or to become an astronaut, and then it was segmenting out the natural birth children out of
yeah,
society because so it was like, oh man, I immediately thought of that. Well, if you didn't have these enhancements, or you were not viewed as worthy, similar to the ways you said of like a degree was.
yeah,
You were automatically excluded, and then you were given the menial professions, the less than professions.
yeah. I mean, again, in my book, I feature the guy has a problem with the shower. It's shower trays leaking or whatever. He tries to get it fixed through the proper channels through
Right.
a graduate plumber,
Yeah,
and that's going to cost him hundreds of pounds, and it's going to be
for sure.
a month before they can come and do it. All the time his shower's leaking, and so
Okay.
he gets this guy who's not qualified to come and do it on so that's how these people exist, the people who are excluded from society.
Here's the thing is about it is that you don't realize just how, number one, how much value those people truly have, how smart they truly are. And in your time of need, if your shower head's not working, you're not calling your accountant, right?
Yeah.
What does the future hold for, again, of some of your other future books? You said you've written 5 total.
Total 5, yeah.
What were the other?
Okay, well, I'll quickly go through. The second book I wrote was one called Walking Out of This World. And in that one, I'm a keen hiker myself. I do a lot of hiking out in the countryside and that sort of thing is what I'd like to do. So it was topical for me. So it features this walking group, but it's about the paranormal.
Yeah.
So this unusual guy joins the group for a walk they're going on.
Okay.
And he knows things about people. He's a slightly unsettling because he kind of how did he know that
kind of guy?
Yeah, and they get to it's lunchtime in the middle of the wild somewhere, and the walk leaders arrange that they're going to sit in this forest clearing and have their sandwich lunch in that environment in the pouring rain, of course. And this other guy says, well, actually, I know there's a pub nearby, and I know the landlord. And we could just go in there and we'd be in the warm and have a drink and have something nice hot soup or something to eat.
Yeah.
And the walk leader, oh no, there's nothing near here. I've no. It's the map. It's nothing. It's this wild country. No. The guy said, no, trust me, it's there. So he persuades people and he leads them there, and they go to this place that's not on any map, and it's very nostalgic, and it's kind of like it was 40, 50 years ago.
That's amazing.
And they meet people that they knew in their youth, former lovers and that sort of thing. And it's all
beautiful.
And they want to come. They want to keep coming back. And then when they get to this clearing, this forest clearing, this guy appears out of nowhere, and he can lead them to this place. It's the only way they can get to it because it's not doesn't actually exist in the tangible world. It's this is a sort of like a spiritual world.
It's a journey to that particular time, place, and location.
And they get more and more worked into this thing. But later on, another figure turns up, and I've called her Lucifix, and you can imagine she's a female devil.
Yeah.
And she leads them to another place that's altogether not a good place to be. There's the guy the first spirit, he gets killed by Lucifix, but he resurrects himself or gets resurrected, and they have a battle royal, and he wins, and he rescues the people. So I'm bringing in kind of like religion and redemption and all those things.
Absolutely.
Into it. So that's Walking Out of This World. Glastonbury Triangle, which is my third book. That's the one I had the most fun with. I don't know if you know Glastonbury in the UK. Glastonbury in England is a very alternative place.
Okay.
It's a lot of hippies and that sort of thing. People go there. It's people into crystals and alternate religions and paganism and all sorts of myths and legends are associated with Glastonbury. It's Arthurian legends as sort of supposed to be where King Arthur might have been, and
That's really cool. That's really fascinating.
all that kind of thing. And it's called the Triangle, Glastonbury Triangle, because people are disappearing, and this journalist is sort of investigating why these people have disappeared. For one reason, his new girlfriend is one of those who disappeared, so he's trying to track her down. And what's happening is there's a marquis who is running theme parks, and he's running a Arthurian theme park, but he wants to set up a new theme park which is to do with ancient Greek legends.
Okay.
So he wants creatures from ancient Greek legend, like satyrs and centaurs and those kind of creatures, awesome. Half man, half beast kind of thing. Yeah, right. And to cut the long story short, the journalist guy is there just in time to save his girlfriend from being turned into a mermaid.
Oh wow!
So
that's amazing.
So that's the kind of story. So, and I really went to town on all the strange cults and the strange place.
Has your work ever been adapted, or have you ever been asked to adapt it to television, films, all these services out there?
Not yet. I think that Glastonbury Triangle might work. I think that could be fun. Yeah. And then the other one, the remaining book, I've called To Keep Us All Safe.
Yes.
And that's about a hypothetical pandemic.
Hypothetical, right?
So I called it. I called the disease chimopox. So it's more serious than COVID, if you like. But it brought in all the lockdowns and the mainly what I'm highlighting is the viciousness of the whole thing, because everyone wants you to enforce these lockdowns, and there's lockdown patrol volunteers in the street checking your credentials. Are you allowed? Do you have a permit to be out? And one of the main characters there is he's been thrown out of Vietnam because the Vietnamese are blaming foreigners for bringing the disease, so all foreigners have to be thrown out. So I'm bringing out sort of xenophobia that we see when these situations happen. So he's had to come back to England after many years being in the Far East. And so he has to somehow make an existence in this sort of pandemic environment. And he gets sucked into all the things like the anti-vax people, and they've got it in for this billionaire who's developing vaccines, and they kidnap the billionaire and all sorts of things.
And the things that transpire from that and everything like that. And the headbutting
So what I'm really sort of bringing out the behaviours that we saw and the attitudes that we saw when we had the actual COVID pandemic.
All too well, definitely. That's and again, there was a movie that came out. It was about a pandemic that came out like 20 years ago. I think it had like Gwyneth Paltrow in it, and I think it may have Jude Law in it at the time. And then all of a sudden it became the very popular film when obviously when COVID took place. But I always find reflections of society when it's done in a scientific manner, or it's done in a manner such as that, very fascinating, because to interwove real life events and putting in a sci-fi setting and making people think and making people look at society in a different way. I love things like that, because you can send a really good message without being preachy, right?
That actually is one thing I try not to be, is preachy, because I think that too often people get one attitude. And it's what they think, it's their point of view of the world, and they're going to ram it down your throat and write a polemic, that's the sort of grinding their particular axe. And what I try to do is not put only one point of view, but to look at the subject from all angles, from the point of view of all the different attitudes and different people involved. And you shouldn't, ideally, you shouldn't really know what my attitude personally is from the book, from reading the book. You should, because I'm not trying to put my own point of view across.
It's very tough to not put yourself into something. Like when it comes to obviously you're an author. The show is my authorship. So I always am a firm believer that it's not about what I do or don't believe in to make this show ultimately successful. It's about the guest and what they present, their particular medium, idea, business, etc. Because again, if you're writing a character and you start putting yourself into it, you can't always say, well, that's what I would do. That's what I wouldn't. It's for the reader who's neutral, who's trying to get an experience. And that's got to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I put all the different points of view, but I put them in the characters. So I have a character who believes a certain way, and other characters who believe the opposite, and have them clash and have them and present how they see things.
Yes.
So that the reader can associate themselves with any of the characters they like, and
Right.
I would expect readers to be diverse as well in their own opinions, and that's absolutely fine. And I hope I wouldn't put people off because they have a particular point of view.
Yeah, and those are the most successful, and those are the most successful authors and the most successful creators who ultimately want to service their audience and make them think from whatever perspective is an objective is being thought of and presented. I always ask this question. Well, I have one more question for you. What you were involved with the early stages, just briefly off your authorship, of artificial intelligence. So what's the difference between artificial intelligence then versus artificial intelligence now?
Okay, I think it depends what people thought artificial intelligence was probably rather different if you go back 20 years or so, because artificial intelligence then was sort of something that people saw that would be shaped by people. We would design something and it would be sort of to do a certain job. And I suppose an example of that is chess playing programs, which are not really artificial intelligence in the way that we see it now with all the chat GPT and those kind of things. The chess playing machines were designed to do one job, to play chess. Correct. Or to play games or whatever game, Go or whatever other games they were. So they were very much tuned for that job, and they didn't have any pretense to having any general intelligence. They were just supposed to be fantastically good at that particular function.
Specific thing.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I think now we're going to something much more general, and the machines are that now they're beginning to learn for themselves. That you give them data,
right,
and the AI is in its training is kind of
self-aware of the questions being asked.
It's sort of getting its own, is figuring it out for itself, and so we don't quite know what it's going to do. If even the people who are training it can't control how it's going to react in certain circumstances, and it does strange things, it hallucinates, goes wrong in certain ways. Now we're still even now at quite an early stage, I think, of the whole thing with large language models, because we're going off at a slightly, I think, off at a tangent with that, in the sense that it's bigger is better. Let's make bigger and bigger large language models and huge data centers and that kind of thing.
For sure. There's always a course correction.
But that's not, can't be where it ends up, because what we've got in our own heads runs on 20 watts, not gigawatts.
Exactly.
It's and it fits inside a skull. So these massive systems, Tower of Babel systems, that can't be the future. I think we've got a number of developments, a number of more innovations to come before the whole thing, really fulfills its potential.
Yeah, and I think that too, also to the degree that there's going to be a lot of pauses on certain things because of the unknown, because of the potential for bad use in the wrong hands, so to speak. So, governments of all countries are playing catch up to a very rapidly evolving, situation at hand. And unfortunately, it's not until something really bad can take place that they're like, we need to scramble and do something. Like there's 50 states, right? We have 50 states. So there's 50 potential different laws across various states when it comes to something like this. It's not a one size fits all type of situation because the company creating that technology that the state is writing a law for could be based in that state. Yeah. So they have an incentive. They're going to be the ones helping write the bill.
Well, I'm not sure that it's even possible to control it in that way, exactly. Because the AI will get an existence of its own, and will it'll be out there, out of control before it won't take any notice of our laws.
Yeah, without question. I always ask this of every guest, and not because they need me, but because of the purpose of the listeners of this show. Where can people find Stephen Ford?
Big pun. Where can you find me?
Where can the listeners find Stephen Ford?
Okay, well, on my website. So it's Stephen Ford, that's Stephen with a PH, all one word, .co.uk.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I got a chance to go to your site. I saw some of your, you have a newsletter. You have wonderful art, pictures, covers of your books. And I hope to be able to, get some copies of them, because it seems right up my alley of what, drives me and makes me make shows like this, to talk to people like yourself who have fascinating stories to tell and have created amazing things. So I want to thank you for your time for that.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you very much, Stephen. This is Rashad with Stephen Ford, author, sci-fi writer, and technological savant on the T.R.O.N podcast, The Randomness of Nothing. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, bye now.